Everybody.
Got it. Well, thanks, Claire. And yeah, name's Bill Witte, and I've been a volunteer with Gina
Oh,
Goldstream Fire and Rescue for
oh,
about 25 years now, and worked with the borough on their 911 system for 10 years. I retired from the borough now, and I have a little bit more time to do stuff like this. And so, yeah, I really think that um, 911 is a program that could be used better, and we have to do a little bit more education about 911. That's why I'm here today. And one of the difficult things about locating or 911 is, well, 911 has essentially two jobs. Where are you at, and what is needed? Okay, so if you ever called 911, they'll probably confirm your location, and they'll ask, what's the nature of the emergency? Do you need fire, police, or EMS? And so that's, it doesn't seem like much, but if you don't have those bits of information, the responders are, um, working from behind the power curve. Um, and I'm going to talk about location. My passion is mapping. I've done mapping all my life, either as a geologist or for systems like 911, and our different ways of communicating location, like address and other ways. And then we have a really neat tool here in the borough. The borough pays for this. You guys pay for this, called Smart911, which helps with a lot of information, but it really helps with location. And so that's primarily what I'll be talking about. How many people here have heard of Smart911 at all?
I
I see Brenda. Anybody else? Yeah. So
Yes,
yeah,
yes, I
it's
have.
okay. A couple people.
have.
Okay, we'll say three or feet. And how many people are enrolled in Smart911 now?
I believe I am.
Okay, all right, and we might even go over how to check that. And I'll bring up my profile and also show that some of my stuff is out of date. And it's a continuing job to update your profile with Smart911. So let's move on. Okay. And so let me figure out my buttons here, forward and backwards. Okay. All right. I'm going to have to use the mouse. So, start off with location. Deep down, everything in all of our computer systems use latitude and longitude to locate emergencies and map out roads and addresses. But latitude and longitude is hard. It's it's a very long set of numbers. It's very easy to mess those numbers out, and it's not a very human way to locate. Other ways, in Alaska, zip code and census block are really, really coarse. Area code 99709 is an enormous area code. It doesn't locate anything really. And when it comes down to it, zip code was meant for delivering things, the mail or packages. And so it changes. Your zip code might change throughout your life. The boundaries move even without you moving. And census blocks are, even for what they use them for demographics, are extremely coarse. And other ones that people might have run into. Anybody ever use military grid in your? I don't know if you have any veterans here. Military grid is one way of locating things. Google, of course, Google loves being everything to everybody. And so, everybody, even if you don't know it, you have a Google address. And it's this strange set of letters and numbers. This is the Google address of my sister-in-law. And it doesn't tell me any more about how to find her than I knew before. So it's a nice start, but I don't think that's ever going to uh, take off. Have you ever run into what three words? Anybody ever use what three words?
No.
It's mostly used in Europe, and every location can be described by three words, and they're random words. Um, and It's an interesting system. It's meant to be easy to remember, but unless a lot of people are using it, and that's true of any system, if everybody has to be using the same system for things to work. And the thing that, all of our 911 system here in Alaska, the United States, we use street addresses. We only use street addresses if we have streets, so it's a little bit harder in the more rural parts of Alaska. But one of the really neat parts about street addresses, they're essentially instructions how to get there. My address is 5751 Abraham Road, and that number, the odds are on one side, the evens are on the other side, and they're in order along the road. That really helps you and helps emergency services locate you, because you see a couple addresses and you know which way you should go on the road. And so street address is sort of the basis of 911. There are ways to deal with places that don't have streets, islands, shorelines, rivers. We would issue addresses to locations on the Chattanooga River, for instance. And there's no, but you just treat the street as an address because treat the river as an address because the river is probably how you're going to get there anyway. So much more useful than latitude and longitude. And I'm old enough that I remember when we didn't have a 911 system in Fairbanks. Okay, and 1984. How many people here had to change their address back in the 80s? It's not that uncommon. One of the big problems they had was we had many duplicate road names, and I think the one which was most often duplicated was Birch. Birch Road, Birch Street, Birch Way, and so let me tell you, that was a big upset. And when I worked at the borough, every day I would hear about that from people who, their first introduction was, "Oh, you changed our address back in the 80s." And but it was essential because, if you have two moose roads, which one are you going to go to? And so it was an important first step. And then from there, once we had unique road names, then we could start numbering the roads. And believe it or not, in Fairbanks there is kind of a grid where from Birch Hill, which is the center of the grid here, as you go north or as you go south or east or west, the numbers increase. And this was built into the borough code. There's an addressing ordinance in the borough code, and somebody back, probably a surveyor, even before the 80s, probably in the 60s when the borough was established, they decided that there'll be one new address number every 16.5 feet. And that's what makes me think it was a surveyor, because 16.5 feet is a quarter of a chain. A chain is a unit of distance that surveyors use. And so, it kind of makes sense. I live out here pretty far in the western part, and I have a large address number, like 5700. As you go down Chena Hot Springs Road and go out far in the Two Rivers area, you have higher numbers. And as you go down out the Parks Highway, up the Steese, out the Elliott, you have higher numbers. And here out on the end of eventually we get into 5-digit numbers as you go far out this D6 expressway. And
Hmm.
so there is a pattern. And if somebody sees, if you see a low number in the thousands, you're probably very close to the baseline or very close to the meridian. And so that's um, there is, sometimes it seems like there's no order to the numbers, but there is. And that being said, there are individual spots like Fairbanks and the city of North Pole. They have their own grids. In Fairbanks and in North Pole, the address numbers are tied to the avenues. So the addresses in the 200s are between Second Avenue and Third Avenue. But and that's where most of the confusion happens, is on the edges of the cities. Van Horn, University Avenue. Sometimes there's some very confusing addresses there. Okay. But it is a system, and one of the things I worked on when I was at the borough is in the borough code. The when I got to work there, it still said that all of your street addressing would be kept on paper maps. And there was a big roll of paper maps, and all the address numbers were penciled in on the paper maps, and it was kind of a mess. And what people would do often is, as they went down the road and were assigning addresses, rather than using that 16 and a half, they would say, okay, you're 200, the next one's 220, the next one's 230, next one's 240. And so your numbering would be a little bit strange, because wouldn't it be nice as if you go down the road a little distance, the numbers change a little, and if you go down the road a big distance, the numbers have changed a lot. And so when we digitized all of this and moved it into a geographic map, geographic information system map, then all of our addresses were, a lot of these problems started to show up. And so this is just an area in the I just call them the Sun Roads in the Goldstream Valley, and just shows you all of the. And the other thing is, when I started in the fire department, we had these paper maps, and they were a little bit confusing because along with the street address numbers, they also had the lot numbers, and it was a little bit confusing because there was extra information you didn't need. And so now this ordinance that I helped write in 2017, it just laid it out in terms of a road segment. This is off of Gold Hill Road. This is Alpenglow Road. We've mapped out at every intersection what the address would be. So there's virtual addresses. And then when somebody actually says, I want to put a cabin here, you pick an address off of this road center line, this geometric version of the road, and say, okay, based upon where your driveway hits the road, your number is something, and here your number is 116 Alpenglow Lane. Okay. And that's because Alpenglow runs from 138 to, I can't see it up there, something probably 300 or 400, and the evens are on the east side and the odds are on the west side. Okay, and it's just arithmetic, and that way, if the numbers are close together, it means the driveways are close together, which really helps when you're looking for a location in the middle of the night. Okay. So that's our addressing system. And how does 911 get caller locations? Okay. And so you've probably seen, cell towers. Oftentimes the cell towers are kind of triangular up at the top. And the reason that is all the antennas here are sort of pointed in one direction, 128 degrees over, the antennas are pointed in another direction. This facet of the antenna array is called the west facet. And here I made a, while I was at the borough, I talked to the dispatcher and I said, well, let's make a 911 call. So I dialed 911 on my phone, and my phone number comes up, okay, with a latitude and longitude, and it the system, and this is the telephone system, um, knows that it was being received on the west sector of this antenna. This is the antenna right over, sort of between by uh, by Fred Meyer East, close to Walmart there. Okay, and so in about 45 seconds, and that's kind of a long time when you've just called 911 because you have an emergency. 45 seconds is a long time, and so it takes them about 45 seconds, and they'll get a first estimate of the location just based upon which antennas, and they get a little bit of a distance by the delay, how long it takes for the signal to go back and forth. Okay, and this is a lot of this work by law has to be done by the telephone provider. In this case, my provider is AT&T, and they have different levels of accuracy. And in 45 seconds, they had a location that was about, plus or minus, I think it was like a quarter of a mile. It was a block, somewhere on that block. Okay. This is older technology, comes, the 70s. This hasn't really changed from the 70s. But there's better ways to do it, and you probably know that your phone, especially if you have a smartphone, your smartphone knows where it is all the time, and that's why Apple and Google and all the other Verizon, all these different carriers, they like those phones because from their business model, they want to know where you are. They want to know what you're buying, what to advertise to you, what's going on. It's how they run their business. But in next generation 911, which is being rolled out right now, those locations which are called are calculated even before you call on the phone. So that location is, and this is my call from when I was, this is exactly where I was inside the borough building. Okay. And, it's different, in the old system, E911, the call, they started to calculate where you were after you called 911 and during the call. Well, your smartphone doesn't know that you're going to call 911. It's already calculated your location to within probably 10 feet before you even call. And so that's been a big improvement. And here's when I called the horizontal uncertainty was 10 meters, and the vertical uncertainty was about 12 meters, which is 30 feet. Probably not good enough to tell what floor I'm on in the building, but 10 meters, this is a 10-meter radius here. It's a pretty good idea of where I am horizontally in the building. Okay? And, there's other information that goes along with it, of course. It knows your the phone number, what kind of phone I have. Probably not that useful, but one thing it does also is it says, okay, here's where that call is coming from. What's the closest road? And now I'm going to estimate an address, and it estimated 809 Pioneer Road, which is not very accurate for other reasons. But usually what the call taker in 911 does, it's he or she sees this point and then estimates where that is in the relative to the road system. This is also pushed out to the iPad that I have in my truck as I'm responding to the call. So I have this information. As long as my iPad has connectivity to the telephone system, and the telephone system is healthy, I have this location as I'm driving down the road, either in a fire truck or an ambulance. And once again, latitude and longitude is at the bottom of this, but humans don't know latitude and longitude. So this happens within less than a second. This information is available, which is very nice. And then here's, like I say, location's really important. What resources are needed comes from how I answer the question. If I say I need police, well, then they're going to dispatch police. But it would also be helpful for me if they knew something about me. Okay. And that's where Smart911 comes in. I've entered information about myself, my age, this was a couple of years ago. And I'm a EMS provider. I'm calling my wife, they have access to my wife's information. If they want to check up and say, hey, Bill just called 911 and he's not talking, do you know where he is? I've also put in some information like I'm allergic to penicillin, so that they have a heads up about my allergies, all the stuff that a medic would ask when they walk in the room. Do you have any cardiac issues? Do you have any, do you speak English? Do you have any other disabilities? Maybe I spoke English, but I'm deaf, and all this information would be available to the call taker. If you're worried about invasion and privacy, this is only available and it's only available to the call taker when this number calls 911. Okay, and so I think it's available for like 45 minutes after I hang up. So they have that information, as well as they have the same, just a very small picture here. They have the same location information. Okay. And so this is available right at the call taker's workstation. I could also put in my picture, so maybe I can't speak. Maybe I'm prone to wander. They would have a picture of what I look like. They would have, if I put the information in, they'd have a picture of my vehicles, contact information for my relatives, and any special instructions, mostly medical instructions. Another screen. This is the screen the call taker's looking at when they dispatch the call. This is the location, and this is just, it was a test call. Okay, so it's just one of the big advances is, one of the difficult things is integrating all these systems. Okay. And that goes right into the CAD, computer-aided dispatch. Okay. Other things, and this would be more important, and all this is opt-in information. If you want to put this information, you can put this information in. One of the questions that you can answer is whether you have a electrically powered medical device, okay, like a IV pump or an oxygen concentrator, a ventilator. And during a widespread emergency, like a flood or a long power outage, emergency managers can figure out that, we have 15 people who have said that they are on electrically powered medical devices. And that gives you an idea of, well, power's been out for 2 days now. We should be checking on those people. Okay. And here's a question. Well, I give you the answer right now. Can you text? This isn't probably much of a question for our audience, but this is a question that just about every young person gets wrong. because young people don't make voice telephone calls; they text. And so the question is, can you text to 911? Okay, you've probably seen that on television, but in Fairbanks and very shortly we should be. I called up just to see how the program's going. It's not available yet, but sometime soon, say the next year, we should be able to text to 911. And like I say, probably most of you wouldn't even think to do that, but I'll give you, a 12-year-old, that might be the first thing they would do. Why would I want to talk to anybody on the phone? I'll just text them. And here, just to show here, this is on my phone. I text, just pushed in 911, and the answer that comes back from the system. And this is good. This was started only recently, well, in the last 5 years. At least when you text to 911, you get this message that says it's not available. You should make a voice call. Okay. And this is me going back and forth, trying to text 911, and it's not working. And now my dog is very interested here, so he's woken up. But on the other hand, there is a way to communicate. Imagine you're in a situation, hopefully nobody ever is, where they have an emergency, but they don't want to make any noise. A domestic violence situation. You can, if you, and what somebody would do is they would silence their phone, make sure all the vibrating and all the beeps and boops aren't happening, and then just keep on dialing, making voice calls to 911 and hanging up. Just call 911, hang up, 911, hang up. And the dispatcher will say, what the heck is that? And they'll initiate a text. This will come from the 911 operator. And this was, once again, me talking to a dispatcher. I get a text from this strange phone number here. And then, this dispatcher didn't even have to type this. It's a button they push, and then it says, this 911 operator, what's the address location of your emergency? And then I typed back in, this is a test. And then she asked, what is the address? And I said, well, 911 Cushman. And then she asked me a bunch of questions that would help in the response. So it is possible. The other way that this system gets energized is people make pocket dials to 911. Just accidentally you dial 911, and it's embarrassing when it happens, but if you ever do that, don't hang up, because they're not going to. They're very persistent, and so in that case, just stay on the line and say, this is not an emergency. Everything's fine here. Thanks for checking on me. Otherwise, they'll just go down this scenario and keep on, asking you what's the address location of the emergency. Eventually, they will dispatch probably troopers or police, because they don't know what's going on. But yeah, I had a propane delivery guy who, he was saying, why do these people keep on calling me? What is this all about? He would get the text, and he thought because the text comes from this weird phone number, you don't know what it is. And so he just kept on hanging up on him. I said, well, you should just engage with them, say everything's fine. But yeah. And there is, at the end of every 911 call that is not, there's no voice on the line, every one of those is investigated in one way or another. Usually, most of them are resolved using this method. They'll try to call you with a voice call, but if you get a voice call from 911, the caller name is going to be it's literally going to say unknown, and you're going to think it's a telemarketer and not answer it. So this is a much some days they'll get 30 of these in a day. You know,
Wow.
there's a lot of there's the number in a year. We're probably up to 100,000 911 calls a year. So there's a lot of you know, and this is part of it. You know, there's a lot of calls to sift through. And then this is just instructions of how one would, you know, make a text call to 911, and just kind of a cookbook for people. And then the other thing, you know, just talk about Smart 911 a bit, and it's got a bunch of layers, and it's owned by, ironically, it's owned by a company called Rave, R-A-V-E. It's recently been bought by Motorola, which is a much more I don't know. Rave never seemed like a very serious name. It's a serious company. They do a lot of. It's a very solid product, but for some reason they picked the name Rave. They got their start in campus 911 and campus alerts. You know, campus lockdowns, that kind of stuff. University of Alaska statewide uses it. Many schools and universities use it. That's kind of built into their kind of genetics of the company, and so they have a splashy name like Rave. So, and so how do you enroll in it? And one, like I said, there's several layers. The beginning layer is just the safety profile. You know, like you know, who am I? What's my phone number? Rave also has alerts like weather emergencies, hazardous material emergencies, fires, and then it has this more like emergency management layer in which you can put in even more information. I'll show you that in my profile. And so that's what I had on that. And now let's just go to the Rave. If anybody got any questions at this point, might as well. We've been talking a lot.
I see there's
Okay.
a comment under chat.
Oh, good. Thank you. What do we got there?
It's from Jim, I think. Richardson? That's what it says.
Yes. That's a good one. And the borough has a program where you can get a address number sign. You've probably seen them. They're about 14 inches high and 4 inches wide, white background, very reflective with big black numbers. And people can get free numbers. And you know, why do people not put numbers on their houses? There's a couple reasons. Sort of geographic privacy is one idea, you know, and some of the people I know, like politicians and troopers, don't like to have their numbers on their houses, which is a little sad. Having gone to some houses that didn't have numbers on them, you know, politicians or law enforcement people or not, it's very hard. And you know, there's no rule, no law that says you got to put your number up, but we try to motivate people by giving them free number signs, and free in that you've already paid for it already. The whole 911 system isn't paid for by property tax. It's paid for via your 911 surcharge, that 25 cents or $1 that you're charged every month on your phone bill. Okay. Even if I don't put my number on my house, I benefit by if the people around me put numbers on their driveways as well. And so it's, yeah, a good point, Jim. Anything, you know, you can't force people to put the numbers up, but just make sure that everybody who wants to put a number up does put a number up. And so you can go to the Borough Emergency Operations to get one of those numbers. Or, you know, the other thing I set up when I worked at the borough is we sent all the supplies to the local fire departments. The local fire departments can make those number signs as well. Yeah, good one. Any other questions?
Yeah, question on 911. Okay, I'm right now in Palm Springs. And
Yeah.
if I called 911, would
Yeah.
that information be available to them?
Okay. If you call 911, the call will be routed to the local answering point, you know, so in Palm Springs. But if Palm Springs has opted into the system, they'll also get your information. And so not everybody has opted into Smart911, but you know, it's pretty well, you know, I've gotten that information. There's a couple places that I've been where I've seen that information available. And on the Smart911 website, you can request, you know, is this area in Palm Springs in Smart911? The one thing that will happen regardless is if you have a Smart911 that has an address, say in Fairbanks here, and there's an emergency alert that there's say a wildland fire in this area, or there's you know, police activity in the area, even if you're in Palm Springs, you'll get alerted that, you know, there's a wildland fire emergency near one of your addresses, and there'll be more information. Yeah. So I guess it's a two-part answer. One is when you call 911, you'll be talking to local people, which is good. But then the additional information will come through to the call taker if that local community has enrolled. Yeah. You know, it's a business. They have to make money. You know, that's sort of the theory there. Let's look at this one. Let's see if I can share a screen here. I'm working on it. Found it. Good. There we go. So this is when, you know, the URL is pretty simple. It's just smart911.com. And there's a splash screen here. It tells you a little bit of what it's all about. You can either sign up for a new user or sign in. And, you know, sign up, I'll just hit that. You know, essentially it just starts with questions, you know, like establishing any account. You know, it's going to want you to have a password and a username. So that's, you know, essentially just the basic enrollment. And then let's go back to here. A little bit more interesting, let's sign in, like you already have an account. And my username is this strange, named after two dogs that I knew. And I can sign in. And this is how I would modify my information as I have different information. And I'll just go through the basic information. I just added an address the other day in New Mexico, and it's saying, well, you put in the address, but you can put in more information like access instructions, you know. So it's always nagging you to keep your data up to date, because that's one thing you're the only one that can make your data up to date. So we'll just ignore that for a second. I've filled out probably 97% of what I should fill out. Okay. And then it's done by household. Myself and my wife. Here's my basic information. Just name. How do I want to be notified? Because one thing it does to keep things fresh is if I haven't updated it in a year or two, it'll get suspicious that the information's stale, and it'll start to give you emails to remind you to update them. Or you can turn that off. Let's turn that back on. Okay. And, basic information, I can put in a picture. I've yet to find a good picture myself, so I haven't put in a picture yet. And then, so that's basic information. And then, this is once again dealing with the individual people. Here's information about myself. Okay. One of the big questions is, would you be able to evacuate yourself if there was an emergency? And not everybody can drive, not everybody has a car, not everybody knows how to evacuate themselves. And so this is a really high risk group of people that we want to know about, especially say in a wildland fire. Okay. And oftentimes it's the older people who don't have the ways to evacuate themselves. I think a very large majority of the people who were killed in the Camp Fire down in Paradise, California, were over 55 years old. Okay. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of reasons. This is part of the question. The other part of it is how do people communicate with one another? And then other things, are you a responder, nurse, a physician, veterinary, radio operator? Put in what was true for me. Driver's license. You don't have to fill in any of this stuff, but I figure I give out this information like I gave out the information at least once today to somebody. The bank. If my bank, if I'm willing to tell my bank this stuff, I'm willing to tell the emergency responders. Just physical stuff and allergies to specific things. If I had a bee sting allergy, I would put it in here. And have I ever had an anaphylactic reaction? These are allergic reactions that one would need to respond to fairly quickly. I put in penicillin and sulfa. Do you have any breathing problems? I have asthma, so I put in any that are appropriate. And then a little bit more medical history, and you can be as detailed or as withhold whatever information you want. This is all voluntary. But these are the kind of questions that the call taker would be asking the caller after they called 911. And so the idea is, can we get this information beforehand? There's one of the ones that we run into. It's in here somewhere. I think under general medical conditions. Our general ambulance crew is 2 or 3 people. For me, I weigh 240 pounds. 2 or 3 people, probably young, fit people, would have a hard time getting me out of my house if I was unconscious. A bariatric patient, somebody who's say more than 350 pounds, that would be, if that's the case, then they're going to dispatch not only an ambulance, but also an engine with a about 4 people on it, because in order to safely move somebody who's having a medical situation and they're 350 pounds, you need 6 people. And then other, organ donor, advance directive, how to find your advance directives, other notes, so that's just the basic questions. Okay. And then, so this is information about people. This is information about the places that you might be. Okay. And so, basic information about, where's the house located? And when you put in an address, it asks you to confirm it on a map, because not all addresses plot. A lot of people use incorrect addresses, even when they're calling 911. They made up an address once, and they're still using it. And then more details about the location. And then, if evacuated, what are my options? And it has very detailed questions about that. Do I have food for 72 hours? Do I have other ways to evacuate besides automobile on the road? So ATV or a snow machine. Do you have a generator? We just got a generator. It's a portable gasoline, 5 to 10 kilowatt generator. And do you have any heavy equipment on site? Stuff that, be good to know. You're not going to use everything on every emergency. Do you have electrical power generator or electricity backup? Because a long electrical outage in the winter would be a big thing in Fairbanks. We've seen that a couple times. And then other information about the house, where are the, a picture of the house. Does it have gas or propane? Where is the location of the electrical shut off? How is it heated? As much information or as little information as you want to put there. Our house is pretty far off the road, and so we put I put a little bit of extra information. The borough assessor always stops at the garage and assesses the garage. Doesn't go all the way to the house, which that's okay with me. But it's I'd rather an ambulance get all the way to me. The phone numbers, landline phones and mobile phones that will get alerted. Emergency contacts, besides the people in the house, a relative. The vehicles that you have, and any animals that you have on site. Here's a picture of Hardy. And it turns out when I'm explaining this to people, oftentimes this is what gets people to sign up. They don't care as much about themselves as they care about their pets. And yeah, just going through this pretty quick. Vehicles, yeah. And then, so this is the first part. This is kind of information that would show up when I called 911. Over on this screen are the alerts that I'm opting in for, okay? And it's broken into different groups: emergency alerts from the borough, from the city of Fairbanks, or from University of Alaska. And here's my opt-in information here. How do I prefer to be contacted? By a text, a voice, or an email? Okay. And where, these are my phone numbers, and this is my email. And then these are all, the only one I didn't opt in for was the buses, because there's a lot of alerts about buses. And you know, and the other one, there's a lot, and I should probably trim this back. This was more, I just wanted to see what they were using it for. But the University of Alaska has alerts not only for its main campuses, but also its remote campuses.
Oh, hmm.
And so you can add or subtract everything in there. And one that's in there, let's see. So these are targeted alerts, but then there's the other kind of alert that you can get. You've probably seen this in the at different times in the year, especially during wildland fire. You can just opt in without using this whole, like I say, a lot of people don't like to volunteer this kind of information. And what they do instead is say, okay, if there's an alert anywhere in the borough, let me know. And that gets more people to enroll, but it's less of a targeted alert. It's kind of a brute force. And if you sign up for that, you'll be getting alerts from remote places down the Salter River, which, you know, it's nice to know. I'd rather read about the paper than, you know, get a text in the middle of the night that Upper Salter River is being evacuated. I mean, not living there or having a particular interest in that. But that's pretty much most of what it is. Here's you know, these are the alerts. This is the one that I was talking about. This is the opt-in alert right here. And it's really, because this is a you don't give any information and everybody gets the same alert. This one we rotate through the years. So there's 2023 wildfire alert information. Sometime in April they'll turn off 2023 information and make people re-enroll just so that it's fresh information. Okay. General, you could stick with FNSB wildfire alerts and you would get the information, you know, for forever. It wouldn't expire. But there's a lot of details about what kind of information you can get information about. Let's see. Yeah, that's just basic information. You can share the information with the borough, and this would be if the borough wanted to know how many electrically powered medical devices are out Chena Hot Springs Road. If you didn't click this, that information wouldn't go out. This goes to Jim's question. If another agency outside of the borough wants, you know, gets your information, you call and they have Smart911. Will that Smart911 flow to that other area? You know, I think I say, why not? You know, maybe I worry less about digital privacy than I should, but I think it's important that, you know, the different agencies know. If I can't trust the agencies, then we got bigger problems. But so that's Smart911 coming up to 4 o'clock here. I'll just have there's a couple other systems I wanted to show you real quick. And they're here. Figuring out. Go back to the PowerPoint. Got two there. Oh, this is one that's kind of big. I see this noticed in social media quite a bit. Pulse Point. Who here has ever seen or heard of Pulse Point?
No. No.
Okay.
No.
Pulse Point. Most people sign up for Pulse Point because it's kind of a summary of the current, you know, essentially 911 calls and other emergencies.
Oh.
And you know, it's like, you know, do I really, I mean, does it affect me that there's a breathing problems on D Street? You know, that's, um, sure. You know, it's nice to know the fire department's doing its job, but it doesn't affect me specifically. But the one, you know, so a lot of people, I think, sign up for this just because, you know, they're kind of like scanner geeks. They just like to know what's going on. But it's much more powerful than that, because what PulsePoint is sure, it has a list and awareness of all the emergencies and all the different stuff that's going on. But the other part, this yellow thing, is the oh, what did I do? Did it just disappear?
Yes, it is.
I think you just went
there.
forward one slide, which ended
Oh,
up.
okay, good. The theory behind PulsePoint is it also knows the location of all the AEDs in town that have been enrolled, you know, into the system. And so if my phone is within, I think it's like a half mile of a medical emergency, you know, a cardiac arrest medical emergency, and I'm close to that emergency, and I'm also close to an AED, my phone will give me an alarm and say, hey, there's a AED at the National Park Service building on Geist Road, and you're over there at the Napa store, and somebody's having a heart attack at ACRC or something like that, you know. And so it's meant to connect people who are CPR trained, and to get enrolled in this, you know, you have to be a professional responder, which means you're CPR, you have a current CPR card, and then it'll, you know, because a lot of people don't know where all the AEDs are, and there's a lot of people having heart attacks, and a lot of times there's a AED in the same building where the cardiac arrest is happening. So it's just a way to get that to connect those resources together. But I just
Also,
wanted to talk to you about that. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
also, Bill, the PulsePoint, if there's if you hear a siren near where you live, you can look on PulsePoint and see how close it is to where you are.
Yeah, yeah.
We had a house fire recently, and this siren was on the Hot Springs Road, but when they turn them off. But we could
Yes.
hear the sirens off the road. You can hear, you know, so it was relatively close to us. So it just clears that up.
Yeah,
So it's
yeah,
useful for that way too.
yeah. And the question is, you know, it's good to know, you know that that's not a enormous fire that's affecting you. And it's sad to know that one of your neighbors is having that kind of problem. But it really doesn't, you know, an AED isn't going to help. You know, and sometimes I see the information
but-
that isn't in here, like back pain. It's like, well, okay, not an AED thing.
Right.
You know?
No, I meant
Yeah.
it was a fire. So we would know that the neighbors needed help if their
Yeah.
house was burning down.
Yep. And it just gives you a little situational awareness of what all's going on.
Yeah.
So
Thanks.
that's a good thing. So any other question? That's what I had.
I came in a few minutes late, but I missed something, and that was, how do you get started with this? What's the beginning point to sign up for this Smart 911?
Yeah. The URL is smart911.com. You've already paid for it through your 911 surcharge. And so you just click on sign up, and it just starts from the very beginning asking you questions about what kind of information do you want to put into the system. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.